The smile never left her face. Not once, not during Ellen's opening monologue, not during the celebrity interview, not even during the commercial breaks when the cameras stopped rolling. But Ellen DeGeneres had been reading people for 2 decades, and she knew the difference between joy and performance. The woman in the 4th row was giving the performance of her lifetime. What Ellen didn't know was that Sarah Chen had been perfecting that smile for 3 years. 3 years of waking up every morning, looking in the mirror, and practicing the expression that would convince her children and the world that mommy was okay, that mommy was happy, that mommy had everything under control. But when Sarah's carefully constructed mask finally cracked on national television, it would reveal a truth that millions of mothers had been hiding. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you're breaking. It was a Thursday afternoon taping in Burbank, and the Ellen Show was in full swing. Ellen was doing what she did best, connecting with her audience, spreading joy, making people feel seen and valued. But as she scanned the crowd during her usual audience interaction, something about Sarah's smile made her pause. It was too perfect, too consistent, too bright for eyes that carried shadows Ellen recognized from her own darkest days. Sarah had driven 2 hours from San Diego with her sister Linda, using money she'd saved from grocery coupons to afford the gas. The Ellen Show tickets had been Linda's idea, a girl's day to help Sarah get out of her funk, as Linda had diplomatically put it. What Linda didn't understand was that Sarah wasn't in a funk. Sarah was drowning, and she'd become an expert at drowning quietly. Drowning with a smile, drowning in ways that wouldn't alarm her 3 children or add to their worries. 8-year-old Emma, 6-year-old Marcus, and 4-year-old Sophie had been through enough. Their father had left when Sophie was barely walking, disappearing one Tuesday morning with nothing but a note that said he couldn't handle it anymore. Since then, Sarah had been their everything: mother, father, provider, comforter, and professional smile wearer. The depression had crept in slowly, like water seeping through a foundation crack. First, it was just feeling tired all the time. Then it was crying in her car after dropping the kids at school. Then it was standing in the grocery store, paralyzed by the simple decision of which cereal to buy, tears streaming down her face while strangers pretended not to notice. But the children couldn't know. They needed her to be strong, to be the rock that held their small world together. So Sarah had learned to compartmentalize her pain, to save her tears for shower time and 2 a.m. bathroom visits, to perfect the art of functional depression. During the show's opening, Ellen had her usual banter with the audience, asking about special occasions and good news. When she reached Sarah's row, she noticed something that made her pause. "How are you doing today?" Ellen asked, her instincts telling her this woman needed more than a casual greeting. "I'm wonderful," Sarah responded, her voice bright and cheerful. "Just having the best day with my sister." But Ellen caught something, a microsecond delay before the response, a flicker in Sarah's eyes that suggested the opposite of wonderful. Ellen had learned to trust these moments, to push gently when someone seemed to need permission to be honest. "Sarah," Ellen said, somehow knowing this woman's name without being told, "what's really going on?" The question hit Sarah like a gentle earthquake. For 3 years, everyone had accepted her "I'm fine" at face value. Her sister, her friends, her children's teachers, everyone was satisfied with Sarah's performance of happiness. But Ellen's question, asked with such genuine concern, created a crack in the dam Sarah had built around her emotions. Sarah started, her perfect smile wavering for the first time. "I'm really good at pretending to be okay." Ellen's expression shifted. She'd heard variations of this confession before, but something about Sarah's delivery, the way she said it like an admission of failure rather than a cry for help, made Ellen's heart contract. "Would you like to come up here and talk about that?" Ellen asked gently. Sarah's first instinct was to decline, to laugh it off, to return to the safety of her smile. But Linda, her sister, squeezed her hand and whispered, "Tell her the truth, Sarah. For once, just tell someone the truth." As Sarah made her way to the stage, the cameras captured every step, but they couldn't capture the weight she was carrying. 3 years of accumulated exhaustion, of being strong for everyone else, of suffocating under the pressure of single motherhood, while maintaining the illusion that everything was under control. Ellen guided Sarah to the guest chair with unusual tenderness. Something about this woman's carefully maintained composure reminded Ellen of her own struggles with depression, the years when she'd perfected the art of being funny while feeling empty inside. "Sarah," Ellen said once they were seated, "tell me what pretending to be okay looks like." Sarah looked out at the audience, 300 strangers who had come for entertainment, not for the messy reality of maternal mental health. But something about Ellen's presence, about being seen so clearly, made honesty feel possible for the first time in years. "I have 3 children," Sarah began, her voice steady but small. "Emma's 8, Marcus is 6, and Sophie just turned 4. Their father left 3 years ago, and ever since then I've been—" She paused, searching for words that could contain her experience. "I've been drowning, but drowning quietly, because if I fall apart, who's going to take care of them?" The studio was completely silent now. Ellen leaned forward, giving Sarah her full attention. "What does drowning quietly look like?" Ellen asked, her voice softer than the audience had ever heard it. Sarah's carefully constructed smile began to crumble. "It looks like crying in my car after I drop them at school, but having a big smile ready when I pick them up. It looks like lying awake at 3 a.m. worrying about everything, money, their father, whether I'm ruining their lives, but then making pancakes in the morning and acting like everything's perfect." Tears began to stream down Sarah's face, but she continued, as if 3 years of held words were finally finding their way out. "It looks like telling everyone I'm fine when they ask, because what's the alternative? Admitting that some days I can barely get out of bed, that sometimes I lock myself in the bathroom just to cry for 5 minutes, that I'm terrified I'm not enough for them." Ellen reached over and took Sarah's hand. "How long have you been carrying this alone?" 3 years, Sarah whispered. 3 years of pretending to be strong because I thought that's what good mothers do. But I'm so tired, Ellen. I'm so tired of pretending to be happy when I feel like I'm disappearing a little more every day." Behind the scenes, Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She turned to her production team and made a request that had never been made in the show's history. "I need you to call Sarah's children," Ellen said quietly. "Bring them here. Now." Ellen turned back to Sarah, who was looking at her with confusion and panic. "Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What would happen if you stopped pretending? What would happen if you let your children see that you're struggling?" Sarah's eyes widened with fear. "I can't do that to them. They need me to be strong. They've already lost their father. They can't lose their mother too." "But sweetheart," Ellen said gently, "you're not losing yourself by being honest about your pain. You're finding yourself. And your children, they need to see the real you, not the performance you." Ellen stood up and addressed the audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, what Sarah is sharing with us right now takes incredible courage, because our culture tells mothers that they have to be perfect, that they have to have it all together, that showing vulnerability is failure. But Sarah is showing us something different. She's showing us what real strength looks like." Ellen turned back to Sarah. "Real strength isn't pretending you're okay when you're not. Real strength is admitting when you need help. And Sarah, you've been strong enough for long enough. It's time to let other people help carry the load." That's when Ellen's surprise arrived. From backstage, 3 small figures emerged: Emma, Marcus, and Sophie Chen, escorted by Ellen's production team, who had somehow managed to coordinate with Sarah's emergency contacts to bring the children to the studio. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. "How did you—" "Mommy," Sophie called out, running toward the stage with the uninhibited joy of a 4-year-old who had just spotted her favorite person in the world. But it was 8-year-old Emma who provided the moment that would change everything. She walked slowly to her mother, her young face serious and wise beyond her years. "Mommy," Emma said, climbing onto Sarah's lap, "you don't have to pretend anymore." Sarah stared at her daughter in shock. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "We know you're sad," Marcus said, joining his sister beside their mother's chair. "We hear you crying sometimes, and we're sad too, because we want to help but we don't know how." The studio was completely silent except for the sound of collective hearts breaking and healing simultaneously. Emma looked directly into her mother's eyes with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "Mommy, when you pretend to be happy when you're sad, it makes us feel like we can't tell you when we're sad either." Ellen watched this unfold with tears streaming down her face. She'd witnessed thousands of emotional moments on her show, but this felt different. This felt like a family healing in real time. "Sarah," Ellen said gently, "what do you want to say to your children right now?" Sarah looked at her 3 babies, these incredible humans she'd been trying so hard to protect, and realized she'd been protecting them from the wrong thing. She'd been protecting them from her humanity instead of teaching them that it was okay to be human. "I want to say I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry for pretending to be okay when I wasn't. I'm sorry for making you think that strong people don't cry or struggle or need help. And I want you to know that it's okay for all of us to be sad sometimes. It's okay for all of us to not be okay. Sophie, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up with the wisdom that sometimes comes from the mouth of babes. Mommy, can we all be sad together sometimes, instead of being sad alone? The question hung in the air like a prayer. Ellen stood up and addressed the camera directly. This family just taught us something that every family needs to hear. Mental health isn't about being happy all the time. It's about being honest about what you're feeling. And children are so much stronger and more understanding than we give them credit for. They don't need perfect parents. They need real parents. Ellen turned back to Sarah and her children. Sarah, I want you to know that starting today, you're not doing this alone anymore. The Ellen DeGeneres Foundation is going to connect you with support therapy for you, family counseling, and a community of other single mothers who understand exactly what you're going through. But Ellen had one more surprise. And because you've been strong for everyone else for so long, we're sending your family on a vacation. Not a fix-everything vacation, but a be real with each other vacation. A week where you can all just be exactly who you are, sad moments and happy moments and everything in between. Sarah was sobbing now, but they were different tears. Not the hidden tears of desperation she'd been crying alone, but the cleansing tears of relief, of being seen, of being supported. Thank you, she whispered to Ellen. Thank you for seeing me, for really seeing me. Ellen knelt down to be at eye level with Sarah's children. And thank you three for being brave enough to tell your mom the truth. Do you know how special you are? You just helped your mom realize that she doesn't have to carry everything by herself anymore. Emma, the 8-year-old, looked at Ellen with startling maturity. Ellen, can you tell other mommies that it's okay to be sad? Because I think there are lots of mommies who are pretending too. Ellen's breath caught. You're absolutely right, Emma. And you know what? That's exactly what we're going to do. As the cameras continued rolling, Ellen made an announcement that would change the direction of her show. Starting next week, we're going to have a monthly segment called Real Moms. Not perfect moms, not Instagram moms, but real moms who are willing to share their struggles so other moms know they're not alone. Because what Sarah showed us today is that there's nothing more beautiful than a mother who chooses honesty over perfection. The audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't typical talk show applause. It was the sound of recognition, of mothers in the audience who recognized their own struggles in Sarah's story, of people who had been waiting for permission to stop pretending everything was okay. After the cameras stopped rolling, Sarah sat on that stage with her 3 children piled around her, and for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't performing happiness. She was just being present with whatever emotions arose: sadness, relief, gratitude, hope, all mixed together in the messy, beautiful reality of human experience. Ellen sat with them for several minutes after the show ended, not as a host, but as someone who understood that healing happens not when we hide our pain, but when we share it with people who can help us carry it. 6 months later, Sarah returned to Ellen's show, not as a struggling single mother hiding her depression, but as a mental health advocate who had started a support group for single mothers in San Diego. She still had hard days. Depression doesn't disappear overnight, but she was no longer drowning quietly. The difference now, Sarah told Ellen during her return appearance, is that when I'm struggling, my children know they can ask, "How are you feeling today, Mom?" And I can say, "I'm having a sad day, but I'm going to take care of myself," instead of pretending everything is perfect. And they can say, "We're having sad days too, and we can help each other through it." Ellen's Real Moms segment became one of the most popular recurring features on the show, with mothers from around the world sharing their stories of perfectionism, depression, anxiety, and the relief that comes from admitting that motherhood is hard and that struggling doesn't make you a bad mother. Today, Sarah Chen is a licensed mental health counselor specializing in maternal depression. She keeps a photo on her desk from that day on Ellen's show, not the professional headshot with her perfect smile, but a candid shot of her crying while holding her children, all of them real, all of them honest, all of them healing together. The lesson Sarah taught millions of viewers that day was revolutionary in its simplicity. The strongest thing you can do is show your children that it's okay not to be okay. That mental health is not about constant happiness, but about honest acknowledgement of whatever you're feeling. That children don't need perfect parents, they need real parents who can model emotional honesty and self-care. Because when a mother stops pretending to be superhuman and starts being human, she gives her children permission to be human too. And that's not just good parenting, that's how we raise a generation of emotionally healthy humans who know that struggling doesn't make you weak and asking for help doesn't make you a failure. That's not just television, that's transformation. That's what happens when someone has the courage to let their mask fall and discovers that the people who love them prefer the real face underneath.